We'll wait for a second. You want to start recording over here? Okay. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
Well, we'd love to share it with you. So thank you, everyone, again. Thank you to the commission and everyone present and staff for your time, and apologize again for this going a little longer than anticipated. As we discussed it and thought about it, we feel like the best option we would present or recommend to the commission is to continue this based on staff recommendation. That would allow us adequate time to notice both of the options we're trying to present to the commission and ultimately to the council. Thank you.
We have a motion on the table that supports that. Any other questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously, which gives you the continuance.
And just to make a clarification, when we got that second concept plan with Allosaurus, we didn't have time to notice it anyway. So there was no way we could have done that for this
Okay,
meeting.
so we'll get the proper notice in place, and then you'll be able to get back on the docket.
We thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's move on to item number 5. This is a public hearing. It's Code Wildflower Village Plan 3A, located approximately at 900 West Harvest Hills Boulevard, west of Mountain View Corridor. Nate Shipp is our applicant. Thank you for joining us. And we'll turn the time over to Nora Shepard for our presentation.
Okay. Sorry about my voice. Did you tire quality for you? It's true. I have asthma, you know, I can't talk or breathe. So what is before you tonight is Village Plan 3A in Wildflower. Yeah, no. Yeah. Okay. Just to give you some perspective, this is an aerial photo with all of the wildflower areas and parcels designated. The area that we're talking about right now is on the west side of the Mountain View Corridor. That's the piece to the bottom of this illustration. So that green piece is basically being split into a couple pieces, one for Village 3A and then one for Village 3B. Right now we're just looking at Village 3A. Here's the parcel. I know it's a different direction, but you can see the shape of the parcel and that it's a portion of that and how the acreages break down. So the proposal is for 2 different kinds of housing products. One is a cottage single, and those are fairly small, 1-level or 2-level option for cottage singles, and there are 50 of them proposed. And then the other is townhomes, and those are in various different configurations. They're front-loaded, back-loaded, in buildings of different numbers of units, but they're townhomes. In the neighborhood plan, in the village plan, which you had in your packets, it talks about the different kinds of architecture and unit types, and they will have variation in unit designs and architecture so that it's not just like one product, so that there will be some variation. So again, these are just some facts. This is right out, the chart on the right is, or the discussion on the right is right out of the community plan. And it talks about what the permitted uses are and the conditional uses are in this area according to the community plan. And then here's some of the acreage allocations that talk about the 2 pieces in this, on this side of the Mountain View corridor housing. So the process, this is in the PC zone, or the planned community zone, which requires that a DAP or District Area Plan be approved, and this is part of the City Center District Area Plan that was approved a number of years ago. Then Wildflower came forward and had a community plan approved, and that community plan was approved in February 2015 and then updated in 2017. That's kind of the overarching zoning, if you will, that really sets forth all of the development parameters. Or if things aren't specifically mentioned, then it defaults back to the code, the development code. We've already looked at Village 1. That Village 1 was approved as a village plan, and we've seen a number of plats come through that were approved by the Planning Commission, and then final plats have gone through, and those areas are now under construction. So this is the next piece. This next piece, this piece is really what was referred to in the community plan, is the Mountain View Corridor housing. And the increase in density is really based on the fact that a large piece of the property is being used for the highway corridor. And that's why it was multifamily was anticipated in this area. In addition, it's kind of overlooking the Mountain View Corridor, and so in terms of use, multifamily or smaller single family seem to be a more logical product. So we have the district area plan, the community plan, the village plan, and then we look at preliminary and final plats once the village plan is approved. And a village plan is required to have a public hearing before the Planning Commission with a recommendation to the City Council, and then the City Council makes the final decision. So let's talk about open space, because I know we had some questions specifically about open space. This paragraph replaces one in your staff report. The staff report has a section that contains language on open space, and the acreages were off. I was using a prior version of the village plan. So this is the revised language for that little section in your staff report, but it is straight out of the draft of the draft of the village plan that you have in your packet. So I'm just clarifying that there was a difference, and this paragraph is consistent with what's in the village plan as proposed.
Could we take a second and read that?
Sure. I'm sorry, so small?
Same as the one in your email?
No, that's a different, that's a little bit different. So this just has to do with, this is really not as much open space as it's just talking about the total area. And the total acreages were wrong between the two parcels. So it doesn't really, so all of the numbers are adjusted accordingly. It's still all the same percentages, but the gross numbers on the acreages were modified a little bit. We can talk about more about the open space and then go back to this if you have questions. So the open space. This is what's shown as the open space plan in your packet. This is what the Wildflower Community Plan states. That open space, including parks, trails, and limited common space adjacent to or within each village plan shall be included, designated, and constructed with the corresponding village plans. Larger parks, such as parks to the west of the Mountain View Corridor and single-family neighborhoods, shall be phased to correspond with the village plans adjacent to them. Open space in the Mountain View housing neighborhood shall be defined at the time of village plan to ensure that such open space is usable. What that generally refers to, let me go back, is there is a hillside area behind the Mountain View Corridor housing. So there's Mountain View Corridor, the housing, and then beyond that, there are hillside areas that are going to have trails. And so that is kind of the bigger, that's a lot of their open space component, is that those trail systems. And I will actually have some more information. They're coming in with a revised community plan as well, which adds some property and further emphasizes the trail component. It's always difficult when you have a big community plan to try to figure out how the open space works with the phasing. Because every little plat can't necessarily have 23.9% open space, because that doesn't really make sense. So in Village 1, there's actually a pretty large regional park that is proposed, and that we expect to see that plat and those plans come in within the next week, I hope. And then on this side, again, it's mostly the hillside open space. They have included a little open space playground area in the middle of the townhomes, which wasn't necessarily shown in the community plan, but we talked about the fact that these townhomes have a need for some kind of play space, so they've added that. So we talked about what the Wildflower Community Plan states. It also refers to Section 19.26.06.4, which is in the Planned Community section of the code. And this talks about, this actually defines the open space for purposes of community plans. And it talks about what things are open space, active open spaces, parks, playgrounds, sensitive lands, trail corridors, creek corridors, historic drainages, wildlife habitat, agricultural lands, equestrian facilities, entry features in any portion of a park strip or landscape medium that exceeds city standards, or other amenities such as fountains and public art that create attractive neighborhoods. Those are all things that are good to be defined. Then it goes on to say, open space shall not include lands occupied by residential, commercial, light industrial, office structures, parking areas, streets, or sidewalks, setbacks and spaces between buildings or parking areas or other hard surfaces that have no recreational value, and areas between multifamily structures or similar treatments that are not larger than 5,000 square feet and are not part of a community trail system and are not developed as a recreation or community amenity. So if we go back to this plan, basically what that says is the little pieces that are in between the townhome buildings would not count as open space according to the definition. The larger areas to the, it's the west, but to the bottom of the picture, those would all be counted as open space. As well as to the right, there's that boulevard area. That is, what they're doing is really above and beyond what we necessarily would require. They're putting in an island and they've agreed to install it and maintain it, so they get credit for that. They also get some credit for the spaces to the top, which are adjacent to a trail that will be put in by Mountain View, by UDOT as part of the Mountain View corridor. So the pieces of that butt up to that trail would be counted as open space. And then, so that pretty much defines it. And what I've done is I've added a condition that the Wildflower Village Plan 3A be modified to more specifically designate areas counted toward the open space requirement. Open space areas shall not include, and then I repeat the language from the code. And I've talked to the applicant about that, and they're okay with this. So some of the areas that they show in green, oh geez, won't be counted as open space for purposes of counting the minimum open space.
That condition is not in the...
No, I added it, and I'm suggesting that get added. So this is the recommended condition of approval. So the first option is for a positive recommendation to the City Council, and I've added that condition. It should say number 4 in front of it, but actually it's number 3. What the Wildflower 3A shall be modified. It's exactly the condition as I had on the previous slides. The option 2 is continuance with specific direction for any additional information that you need to make a decision, and that there is a negative recommendation to City Council.
You finished your presentation just in time.
I know.
I think you're losing your voice. Sorry. Hello. Would you like to introduce yourselves, please, for the record?
You bet. For the record, my name is Nate Ship. I am representing Tanuki LLC.
Yeah,
Is the applicant, I believe.
right, that's right.
Hi, Nate, and who did you bring with you?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm Mindy Danzy with Tanuki as well.
Lindy Dancy, is that what it was?
Yes.
Yeah, Mindy with an M.
Mindy. Hi, Mindy. Did you want to add anything to the presentation tonight?
You know, I think Nora did a great job. Professional as always. We appreciate her time and energy and effort in working with us. We would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, great. Well, before we get into our discussion of this is a public hearing, so we'll open up public comment on item number 5, public hearing for Code Wildflower Village Plan 3A. Anybody have any comments they prepared? No? Okay. We will close public comment for item number 5 and open it up to the Planning Commission.
I'll go first.
Okay, Commissioner Cunningham.
So do we need to weigh in on the height of the signage at this point? The signage, that was one of the things that,
That was actually approved as part of the community plan.
okay.
So they are within the height that was allowed as part of the community plan. They've
Okay.
changed the design a little bit, but they plan to change that in Village Plan 1 as well, so that they're all consistent. It's just kind of a more refined version of what you see in the community plan, now that they're actually getting down to it.
And we'll have more detail on the trail system not going up in the mountain later, correct?
Yeah, and again, this is, being a village plan is still pretty high level. And so when the plats come in, we will look more specifically at things like details for that little play park, although they've given me some information and
Okay.
more details on the landscaping and more details on all the trails and the sidewalks that are associated with those plats. As I mentioned, I expect to receive a revised community plan for the whole wildflower, adding some acreage, and with that, they're emphasizing certain different things in amenities, including a trail system. So I think that with this new submittal and additional land, they will more emphasize access to the trails.
Okay.
Is that a correct assessment?
Yes.
And we just need to wait for more detail, or can we ask any questions about it?
Eventually.
I'm happy to answer any
I'm just wondering
questions
if
you ask me to the best of my ability.
I wonder if they're going to be multi-use, that more than just like hiking, can bikes and stuff like that?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thanks.
Yeah, there'll be a multi-use trail along the highway corridor that UDOT is putting in. And then there are sidewalks within the development and a nice, along the arterial, on the south side, there will be widened sidewalks. And that'll be a really nice, pleasant, multi-use experience. And then on the hillsides, that will be developed more when the revised concept plan comes through. You will not necessarily see the preliminary plats, but we will process those. If the lotting in the village plan is consistent with the preliminary plats that we receive, then we deal with it. David has the authority to approve those preliminary plats, but we will make sure that things like minimum open space is clearly defined and improvements to that open space.
I can add the specificity of the type of trails if you'd like. We have your typical asphalt trail planned, but in addition to that, we also have hiking trails that are not paved. We also have single track mountain bike trails planned. And so with the three types, right, we have your asphalt trail, you'd be your typical asphalt trail, then we have hiking trails that would be for dogs or hikers, and then we have biking trails set aside, all specifically designed and constructed for those individual types of uses.
maintains the UDOT trail?
It's a UDOT trail, so it would be maintained by,
Will the city take it over when UDOT puts it in?
I don't believe that's part of our agreement with UDOT. I think they're required to maintain it, but I wouldn't swear to it.
yeah, my understanding is that it's a UDOT trail that's installed and maintained by UDOT. All of our trails will be privately maintained by the Wildflower HOA, and there'll be public access easements across certain trails, but I can't speak beyond what was represented to us at the time. UDOT informed us 161 of our acres were going to be converted to a road, and they included the fact that they would be building these trail cross sections as part of that. Beyond that, they haven't told us anything.
Commissioner Kilgore?
I apologize, I missed this typo, but I thought for clarity's sake, because planning staff put the, under the recommendation that they said that we should choose from the options in section I of this report, but there is no section
Oh.
I. So just for clarity's sake, I apologize, I didn't put it in my email.
Okay,
It should be, I think, section H.
yeah.
Okay. There's a table of, actually, there's a paragraph called code deviations, and it talks about where the applicant is deviating from code. However, most of those have been approved by the community plan, and so it's not an
Right,
issue.
exactly.
But it does say here that the size, number, height of signs not approved in the CP is requesting approval in the village plan. So is that something that, I thought that's what Commissioner Cunningham's question was about, and you said that it was approved, but in the staff package says it was not approved, and therefore we need to discuss it. So I was just want clarification
I
on
think they're
that.
pretty consistent. There may be, some of them may have moved around a little bit, but I believe that the signs are pretty consistent with the community plan. That's one of the things I look at specifically.
So the community plan showed the height of the signs but it didn't show specific locations of the signs, so that's why we're including it in the village plan, the specific locations.
Okay. So it's not something that we have to approve specially. And then there's a table of type of signs, and I don't understand the first two. They both say entry feature, they're both entry features, and they say same as above in the code standard. So what differentiates one entry feature sign from the other entry feature sign,
Answer that.
other than height?
What page?
Sorry, it's page 4 in the staff packet, and it's got a table of types of signs, and the
Okay.
first two says the type of sign is entry feature, and then entry feature, and then the city code says same, gives the city code, and then it says same as above. So what's the difference? The only difference is your proposed standard is one height and another is a different height, but the code is the same and the entry feature is the same, so I don't understand what the,
Oh, I see. So it's in my staff report that he's referring to, which I pulled right out of the
community plan,
village plan.
or the village plan. Do you know what page of the village plan you were looking at, Nora, when you pulled that? Just so we can find it
There
and
are
have the
two
right
entry
reference?
features. Well, one's a primary entrance sign, the top one. Over here, it says primary entrance.
right, but
And then
then
the other
below
one-
it says same as above, so they're both
Yeah.
primary signs.
I think the intent is that we're going to have
One big one.
the two different neighborhoods, and so we're differentiating the two neighborhoods slightly by the two different entrance signs. You're going to have one for the cottage area and one for,
Yeah, this chart
So it's
really
going to be like the tall
doesn't make much sense.
monument-looking thing, like a lighthouse-looking thing, is that?
I think it's 14-3.
yeah, here it is. Okay. But Nora, I'm trying to find the chart you might have pulled.
Chart.
One.
Well, she said she had it.
Thanks. Spell
Right. So I thought all that was fine. It's just that in the staff packet,
Yeah, I know I just copied and pasted that from somewhere,
Okay.
but let me take a look.
and the only reason why I'm making it I'm making a comment on it is because it was right under your sentence that said that it requires approval, requesting as approval. But I didn't know what to approve. And now you're saying, or actually, it sounds like you're going to approve, but I still have a question as to what these two interfeatures that are exactly the same are when they have different heights.
So it's not proposed, 30 feet was approved. And I don't know, two per community.
Yeah, so what is?
But we're not asking for any of those.
Right, we didn't ask for two.
So which one? But this one says.
That's 5 by 10.
In order to help alleviate some of the confusion, if you look at the village plan itself on page 1403, it shows the specific signage and entry features that we're
Yeah,
approving tonight, or asking for approval tonight.
Okay.
We have a
There we go.
public art structure that has a wildflower sign associated with it. That will be located as shown on the next page, 14-04, as the main structure coming into Wildflower.
Okay.
As you come west off of the Mountain View corridor. It's meant to set aside, or set apart, the fact that you're now leaving a freeway and you're coming home, right?
so
And
here's
so that's kind of the main entrance feature. That's the red dot
right here.
Okay.
right there.
So,
And as you come up the hill there, then these dots then correspond to the location of the different types of signage that we're asking for. So the previous page on 1403 shows the secondary entrance feature being the first sign that we would have as you kind of come into going now north. So you know that you're now into Wildflower, and that's an 8-foot by 4-foot sign that sits there at the entrance. And then as you come up that main street, you'll have secondary entrance neighborhood signage saying, "Welcome to Wild Rose at Wildflower," or the different neighborhood names. And we have those for both
That's
the
this one?
townhome product that you'll be at and then the cottage area.
So Ken, you can just ignore that chart.
I don't want to make a mountain out of it.
Well, I just wanted you to see the specific village plan component that we're talking about. I think it's pretty straightforward when you look at the plan, what we're after.
Right.
I did have one question. If on the public art structure and separate wildflower sign, it says that the public art structure is 20 feet by 30 feet, and the separate wildflower sign is 30 by 18 inches? Is that right? Is 18 inches high?
30 by 18 inches? Yeah, that's what
30 feet by,
Wide by 18 inches.
yeah,
what
is
this
that going to be
says.
high enough to see wildflower?
That's funny. I don't
there's
believe it's
no-
18 inches. I believe it's 18 feet.
You're gonna have to stick to that now, it's
30
in
feet
writing.
by, oh,
I
yeah,
can't tell you how many times I've read this document, and without fail, I come to this meeting, and there's always one.
well, this is probably 18 feet, and then this is
Yeah,
30.
that should be 18 feet, not 18 inches.
There are a couple little typos that Mindy and I have found that will be corrected.
That would be kind of interesting, wouldn't it? 30 feet tall by 18 inches.
So my issue is moot, but the little
Yes.
typo is a big deal.
Yes, it is. So thank you, Commissioner, for pointing out, once again, one of our typos.
Okay, that's good. So I'm okay. Again, I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, but I'm glad we caught something there. I do have one other, there's one other, question. What is that? Oh, yeah. What is a utility bridge? Is that one of those things that goes across the road or something that has all the pipe ducts and things like that?
You're gonna have to help me understand where you're referencing.
Was the last bullet in, okay, so page, let me find it. It's, see, I go by the stat pack page. It's page 10-04, in your packet, and it's the very last bulleted paragraph. Oh, actually, it says, you know what? It says UDOT will be responsible for the installation of the utility bridge, so maybe it's not your issue anyway, but...
Yeah, so I appreciate you pointing me out. I wanted to make sure we're talking about the same thing before I answered. The answer is, as UDOT builds what ultimately will be a freeway, they're not constructing that today. What they're up on the hillside building right now are the two frontage roads, the outside of the right-of-way. So they've got a southbound and a northbound lane that will ultimately just be frontage roads to the freeway. As they construct the freeway, they're restricted in how quickly they can raise a grade. We've learned that that means that as they come up 2100 North across Redwood Road, they will start immediately digging into that hillside. And as they wrap around at that corner, they will be 80 feet below existing grade. So if you can envision a big canyon being dug between these two roads that are now being constructed, 80 feet deep is where that freeway will be. As they come around the bend and turn south, so as they come up, they will still, they'll still be down, and then but they're continuing to climb on the road, so they don't catch existing grade until Harvest Hills Boulevard. The utilities that we're laying in the ground now, because there is no canyon, are going to be all of a sudden suspended in the middle of the air when they bring this freeway through, and it will be up to UDOT at that point in time to figure out how to suspend those utilities or reroute them in a way that's acceptable to the city so that they'll continue to function. And UDOT has acknowledged that it's on them to do that at the time they build the freeway.
So you're just putting that fact into your village plan, but it's not your responsibility to worry about that.
Well, it was a concern that was raised by your engineering department and your public works department as they reviewed our plan, rightfully so. They were looking long-term and vision, knowing what's coming to the city and saying, wait a minute guys, how is this going to function? And our answer to that question was to include that so that everybody was clear that this is an obligation of UDOT in the future.
And I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Especially with sewer, because you can't really take sewer all the way down and then back up again.
Well, I just wanted to be sure that it wasn't like an HOA that had to take care of that.
Oh.
It was just,
No.
yeah, it seemed to.
While we're talking about the corridor, you want to give us a quick update about timing, about when that's going to be finished?
Well, I can tell you what I know.
That's good.
And that's coming from their contractor who has begun construction up there. My understanding from them is that they have received the go-ahead and now have signed a contract that obligates them to have that road open by July 15th.
Which year?
They're telling us that from Harvest Hills Boulevard down to Redwood Road, or excuse me, SR 73, will be paved by December. They are moving a lot of dirt, and they're going very fast, so every indication is...
This involves both frontage roads, right?
Yes.
Both frontage roads, the west frontage road and the east frontage road, on both sides of the canyon that he's referring to.
Which is important because one of those frontage roads provides their secondary access for this Village Plan 3A. So it's important that that is installed.
Nora, could you pull up the condition that you proposed earlier today? And I think that we've discussed this enough unless...
Can I ask, before you ask for a motion?
Sure.
That there is one small item in the conditions from staff and the engineering that we had requested be addressed.
Yeah, I was going to get to it.
Engineering.
I was just giving you the opportunity to speak.
Okay, so item number 8 in the engineering staff report that says, talks about the project complying with parks, recreation, trails, and open space master plan. That item needs to be deleted because the community plan supersedes those things.
Any other comments before we go on to entertain a motion? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Based upon the information and discussion tonight, oh, is this right? Yeah. The discussion tonight, I move to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the Wildflower Village Plan Area 3A with the findings and conditions below in the staff packet. Also, adding a condition for a add a open space condition per planning staff. All right, Shepherd, is it?
Yeah, that's it.
Nora's recommendation, and to delete the condition number 8 from the city engineer's report, the condition 8 from the city engineer's report.
We have a motion from Ken Kilgore. Second?
Second.
A second. Commissioner Cunningham, any question on the motion? I do. Do we have to read in the condition, since it's not in the packet? Okay. Could we pull that up so we can read your condition? Okay.
So open space shall, okay, Wildflower Village Plan 3A will be modified to more specifically designate areas counted toward the open space requirement. Open space shall not include areas between multifamily structures or similar treatments that are no larger than 5,000 square feet, are not a part of a community trail system, and are not developed as a recreational and community amenity.
Thank you very much. Any other questions on the motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you for having everything prepared. And all right. Item 6, this is public hearing, code amendments, Title 19, multiple sections, text amendments to be presented by Planning Director David Stroud.
Okay, have several amendments here. Title 19, I'll actually get out of this and go into a Word document where I have those. Periodically we see things as we're reading through codes, dozens of pages, things get caught, hey, that's wrong, or let's propose a change to that. Let's go back here. Where do we go? Review. Nope, that's not it. There we go. Okay. And so tonight we have several changes proposed to present to you. I guess the best way is probably just go one by one, or unless you want to dig at something specifically. I assume not all of these would have any kind of discussion with them. Several make sense. Some are just cleanup, some are just errors. Chair, how would you like to proceed?
Do you want to give us the high-level overview?
High-level overview.
Unless anybody else wants to see it in more detail. Let's do high level and we'll dig into things.
Okay, like I said, a lot of cleanup items here. Some definitions we're adding, some types of signs we're adding. Signs we're prohibiting. There's some cleanups to the buffer overlay. It's actually not a zone, so we're eliminating calling it a zone. We're adding armoring techniques around the river areas. There have to be cannot be hard armoring techniques. Armoring. It was new to me too when I first came out, but basically to prevent erosion, things like that, called armoring.
You don't want like old cars.
Yeah. Like on my in-laws' property. For instance, there's some changes here for lot size. City-approved special events, that's a request of the special events coordinator. This one here probably would be wanting to discuss will be the artificial turf proposal. We've been directed to bring some code to the City Council for artificial turf, so we have that presented here. Fencing requirements, parking requirements for a hotel, which were out of line, in my opinion. A lot of cleanup stuff, but I guess at this point, we can go specifically to any code you want to look at. All
right, before we take care of the people who are present, I want to take care of someone who's absent. Commissioner Steele had two. What's that?
Yeah, do you want to open up the public hearing and then
that is
close
right.
the public hearing?
Let's open the public comment at this time, if anybody would like to come forward. No? Closing we'll close public comment, seeing no comment or nor people. All right, opening this to the Planning Commission, Commissioner Steele, this is part of her letter, quote, Code Amendments 19.06.08. I am concerned about allowing artificial turf in front yards. I think the 25% will be hard to determine without a lot of staff time. But if the commission decides to move that portion forward, there needs to be clarification on interior lots and what footage can be used to determine the 25%. Can the side yards, though not visible, be used in the calculations for the 25%? Also, I wonder if something should be added concerning park strips and artificial turf. Can park strip be used to calculate the 25%? Can artificial turf be used in park strips? So there's a bunch of questions there. You want to address some of those?
Yeah, I see an error. I hate to do this, on the fly, but, we discussed this earlier before the meeting. That should probably be, or, wrong keyboard. Got too many keyboards here. Let's see. The way it's written now, it's up to the owner to say, okay, if I'm going to do artificial turf, 25%, the way it's written now, they would decide where that goes. You can obviously make a recommendation to say no park strip turf. More than welcome to do that. Right now, it's fairly open to allow them to decide where that goes.
All right. That's a good answer. Okay, here's the next one. 19.13.10. Since Rocky Mountain Power has not been cooperative in giving definitions, by the way, this is from Sandra Steele as well. Since Rocky Mountain Power has not been cooperative in giving definitions of transmission lines and distribution lines, we need some kind of clarification concerning each. And she quotes Wikipedia. Distribution lines carry this medium voltage power to distribution transformers located near the customer's premises. OSHA's sub-transmission lines carry voltages reduced from the major transmission line system, typically 34.5 kilovolts to 69 kilovolts. This power is sent to regional distribution substations. Do you want to?
I'm not a power expert. We will have a map that goes along with this, which will identify the transmission lines which will not be required to be buried. So along with that map, any line that's not identified as a transmission line will have to be buried.
As far as what's proposed. Okay. Planning Commission.
On 19.0202, you have definitions of commercial, meaning realizing a profit from the sale, but what about nonprofit in there? Does that matter? There's large organizations that are not for profit or nonprofit as well.
Yeah, this was added, I guess, in the past. This came from Kevin. Actually, the commercial definition of some ambiguity in the past, some problems. I'd have to ask Kevin if we need to make a difference between nonprofit and profit. And the commercial definition.
I mean, I don't know where it references commercial, but if you're going to define one, I don't know why you just singled out for-profit entities.
Well, I think it was in the context, I don't remember. So this is an issue that came up in the past. I can't remember the exact situation, but we struggled with what it meant to be commercial. It was some other use in the code. I didn't have time to research it, but it was several years ago. We just didn't know how. There was some code, some difference. It was a permitted use that hinged on what we used as the definition of commercial. We didn't know whether or not it was a permitted or prohibited use.
Okay.
But it was related to business. If you want to specify nonprofit, that's fine too.
No, I just didn't know if there was a specific target for that added language.
I think it's for profit. That was the target.
And then, David, you referenced that staff was directed. Could you just give us some context on the artificial turf and why that is before us?
The staff was charged with coming up with some text for artificial turf. People have expressed in the past.
From council?
From city council. Some residents have expressed in the past the option to have artificial turf. And so we're doing as directed and presenting it before you tonight.
And just for clarification, this is a opportunity that we could accept some but not all, right?
Yeah, you could break out any of these you want, or you could, recommend approval, accepting, like say for instance, the turf if you don't like that, or you could
Well, I wasn't
break the
gonna, I
turf
wasn't
out.
gonna,
Yeah, it's up to you.
specify any particular section. Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Kilgore, didn't you have some questions about roof pitches?
Yeah, and others. So let's see. I'd like to start with the artificial turf.
Okay.
So okay, in the staff packet, and maybe it was just a offhand comment, but it said that a city council person requested that we look into, or staff looks into artificial turf. And was the request to add artificial turf, or was it to look into it? Because if it was to look into it, I'd like to hear what kind of...
It was both. Look into it, come up with something, and then propose text.
Okay. Well, so, I mean, I also, there weren't any pictures or anything. When you look at, if you just do internet searches, there's both pros and cons, obviously. And I think for Utah, because it depends on the climate, but for Utah, I guess the pros would be no use of fertilizer, no mowing, and potentially saving on water.
Water.
Right? But there are negatives out there, and BYU actually did a report on it, and maybe it's because BYU was looking into it, and in the report, they said that, okay, so some of the negatives in Utah would be, for example, if the ambient air temperature is 90 to 100 degrees, which it often is in Utah in the summer, they called it outdoor temperature, 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The turf temperature goes up to 200 degrees. And so, I mean, it's so hot that a baby will burn its feet on it, and hands, or adult, yeah. And
I don't know what 200 degrees does to you, but it...
Yeah, so then, well, and then it turns out that in California, they knew this, and so a lot of installers now recommend that you add a sprinkler system to cool it off. And that means that there is no savings on water, potentially. And secondly, we use secondary water, or those who use secondary water from the lake, that means that lake water is going onto this plastic. And they said that there's all kinds of odor, depending on where the secondary water is coming from, all kinds of odor issues. So, manufacturers often recommend users, it cuts back on water and mowing, but it does not cut back on maintenance because they recommend that the lawn is washed with soap. So that means now we're getting soap water into the storm drains.
And then the beauty of this is not a requirement. I mean, if someone wants to, I'm sure they're going to look into the pros and cons and what they have to do. And if approved, obviously, it's an option.
Yeah, I understand. I understand that. It's up to the owner, just like there are many pros and cons to play sets and things like that. But the issue that I'm wondering is why are we looking into it at the city? If the purpose is to save water, well, maybe we're not saving water if we don't actually do the research.
And that was one thing. I looked at several city codes, pulling up some, and honestly, I did not see that in any code to water it. So that option is there, but the codes that I looked at, no city actually said, okay, and how could you require somebody to water it anyway? That's going to be a personal choice as it is.
Right.
But
so, and then, we wonder, does it promote the health and safety and welfare, does the code do that? Well, if, animal wastes, they don't decompose on artificial turf, which that's another reason why these installers, as well as some of these reports, recommend that you wash your grass, your artificial turf, because urine will seep through, but the solids
won't,
doesn't.
yes.
Which also includes bird waste. It's not just dog waste. So there's all kinds of, so that's why I'm not against allowing artificial turf, but I wonder why we're putting it into the code if there was a specific reason why someone, again, if it's to save water, if it's to save mowing time or whatever, because it's not a clear-cut thing that it actually does save water or that it actually saves other things, particularly in our environment. I've seen all kinds of pictures where they said that, if there's snow, then it causes, and especially because we have subsidence, that the artificial turf will pull away from the curb, so that it's kind of like the weed fabric, where after a couple of years, it's just all over the place. And so, again, is that really, enhancing the community if that's what we're looking for. So I'd like to see if there was a study done, or we're just simply writing code and throwing it in there because someone asked for it. You know what I mean? I guess that's my issue with this particular code, because it may be good, but even I think BYU was looking to do it in their own on their campus, and they decided against it because of their research. So that's why I'm just wondering if if we shouldn't do a little bit more looking into before we actually write code and approve it. So that's just my comment on that. Let's see. We also have. Oh, so here. Actually, I'm going to go with a simpler one. Painted signs. I was wondering if this is code 19.18.04, paragraph 1.s, I think it is. We include painted signs, and I was wondering if painted signs means also like street art or graffiti signs. For example, there's a massage parlor in American Fork where on the side of their building there's a big graffiti that advertises the kinds of work that they could do, kinds of tattoos, which I think is actually great, but I wonder if we're saying that also, I think in West Valley there's a taco shop, a taqueria that has a big, it was done by high school students. It's graffiti.
Yeah, if the purpose is to advertise as a commercial message, then yes, it's a sign.
Yeah, so then
and based on this, that would be prohibited.
Okay.
This stems from if the Smiths and probably need to, propose an amendment to this as well, or recommend if you forward this on. Smiths put up some signs on their buildings a couple of weeks ago that we all thought was a painted-on sign. It was advertising their click list service where you go around the side. Evidently, that was probably a vinyl-type sign that was pressed onto but everyone thought it was painted. Because it came off once we told them to take it off, you couldn't do that. There's no sandblast, and there's no paint that was covered up with anything. So I think it was some type of vinyl, press-on sign, which the language had to be tweaked, painted or resembling painted-on sign, because that's what it looked like. The proposal would be to prohibit that type of sign.
So then I think we should call out then specifically also then either graffiti or urban art, or what would they call it? Street art signs.
Well, it'd be defined, if it's a commercial message, it's a sign. And so if you want to allow that, then you'd request, recommend, that type of.
Yeah, I just want, okay, so like the massage parlor in American Fork, it's a picture of a big bird. It doesn't say anything about it being a massage parlor, but what it's doing is letting you know what kind of work they could do, but it's just it's a mental association, you know what I mean? So is that something we're allowing? Because it's not specifically advertising, or are we not allowing, or are we saying, no, you shouldn't be able to just paint anything that you want on there? I mean, some will argue it as art, and some will argue it as an actual sign, because it's telling you, I mean, like the taqueria, it's like a Banksy, so that one is probably art. But the massage parlor, it looks like that's the kind of art they can do.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that,
Let me read you how we define a sign. Says a sign means any object or structure used to identify, advertise, or in any way attract or direct attention to any use, building, person, message, or product by any means, including the use of lettering, words, pictures, or other graphic depictions or symbols. So based on that definition, I would interpret if someone had a big bird on the side of it, that would constitute a sign.
Okay. Okay. And then now that I want to get into, so I'm having an issue with the flat roof, the prohibition of flat roofs for residential homes, as in the proposed code 19.16.05.2.c. And I remember that we had a problem, or we had an issue with the way the code was written regarding the slope of the roof, and we couldn't decide if it meant flat or if it didn't mean flat and all that. So I know that needs to be defined. I think we need to define what that means by slope and such. However, I don't know if that necessarily then extends, or does it, to saying we flat out prohibit flat roofs. That to me is an extension that goes beyond just defining. Now, if it is what the intention is, then I'd like to know why. Is it a mechanical reason? Is it a safety issue? Is it snow on roofs? And the reason why I ask is we have tons of commercial buildings that all have flat roofs.
Right, on a commercial building, right.
Commercial building, yeah. So why, if we allow it for commercial, what is our reason for not allowing on residential? And so I bring up this example. This is in my neighborhood. They just moved in last week. The red circles that I made are flat. So the big one is a porch. You could just say it's a porch, it's not a roof. But the one to the right and one to the left, they're part of the structure. They're roofs over an actual room. While they were building, I walked through it and looked at it. And so does that mean that our code would not say that those are now prohibited throughout the city?
It doesn't apply to single-family homes,
So only to, so
to
by residential.
to multifamily.
Family.
Single-family, it won't apply to single-family structures. This stemmed from the Fairway Townhomes that came through not too long ago.
Right.
And technically, 0.5% of a roof is a slope. Technically, it is, you got to drain stormwater off. And that got the discussion going of, okay, let's further define it.
Right, so I understand the definition, but, okay, so
Yeah,
then my
but that
question
doesn't
is,
apply to single-family.
why does it apply to then, why are we singling out multifamily homes or townhomes and such? What's the reason? Is it simply aesthetic, or is there a mechanical?
Probably, it wouldn't be mechanical, it'd be aesthetics. You look at something like a Walmart or Smith's, such a large structure like that, technically it appears to be a flat roof. Again, it's going to have some kind of slope on it, obviously, for stormwater. But those types of structures are much more difficult to actually make a peak roof, a gabled roof on
Right, so
it.
then if we have flat roofs for large structures and flat roofs for small structures, why not flat roofs for medium-sized structures, other than just pure subjective aesthetics? I mean,
It was an architectural design standard, just like how you require different types of materials or wrap, materials around the sides. It is an architectural element.
But again, if we allow it for the big ones and we allow it for the small ones, why not for the middle ones? I mean, some of the most award-winning architecture now is flat roof. Are we saying our city doesn't allow that kind of award-winning architecture for a medium-sized home?
Yeah, on multifamily, yeah.
I don't understand why that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, we can get into opinions on that, obviously. This is direction we were given also, to come up with something for...
So definition.
For standards for multifamily residential.
Right. Okay, so... I don't get the logic, and I submit that it's purely aesthetics, and it makes no difference. If we already allow it for the big end and the small end, then why not just the middle end? And then we decide on a case-by-case basis when the applicant brings just like we do today. We already, for large buildings or for like what a planner, a developer of a neighborhood for single-family homes does, we look at their elevations and we make recommendations and et cetera. We can just do that with all buildings. I mean, whether it's single-family or multifamily. I don't understand the reason why we'd say no. No, especially since many of these are winning awards and things, and I don't see why. I mean, we had a discussion last time where I think it was Commissioner Steele mentioned that one of the developers' applications, their elevations look so much like a previous development that they created, and that we want to distinguish our neighborhoods more. And yet here we are making limits on an arbitrary, for an arbitrary thing. So that's why I just feel like, why even put a prohibition on a certain type of architectural style that we already allow for the large and the small, and is winning awards everywhere in the world. So that's my comment, I guess. So that's it for my comments.
All right, I'm going to throw one in.
Okay.
In our last planning commission, we talked about, Nora, about corner lots. There was a certain property, we were talking about 10% more, and I noticed that it showed up in this code change on page 117 of 141 of the whole packet, that corner lots shall be 10% more than the minimum required of the zone. So I was just wondering, what were your findings from the last meeting, and does this code fix it?
So the way the code reads, it talks about being 10% more than is required in the zone. So I did that research and found out it's not comparing what's happening next door. It's that those have to be 10% larger than the minimum that's required in the zone. That's what the code says. What this does is it takes that out of rural residential, the bigger lots. And the reason that that's in there in the first place is to make sure that because of the increased frontage requirements on a corner lot, that there's enough space to build a house of comparable size to the rest of the houses in the neighborhood. But where you have an acre lot anyway, then that's not really the issue, because you have a big lot anyway. So what I think this amendment does is it says you don't need to do that in rural residential.
Okay,
And on the bigger lots.
so it's just for the smaller lots?
Yeah, basically, basically 14,000 square feet and bigger, why do you really need 10% more? You can't build a house in 14. Honestly, you can make the argument going down the line too, but because you have that increased side yard setback, it does take away some of the buildable area.
With a larger lot?
Honestly, you could still build a house there, yes. That meets minimum standard, but this gives a little more flexibility on house size.
And you're not limited to an envelope because you already have a large
Right.
lot. Okay, thanks. Any other comments on the proposed changes? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Based on the evidence and explanations received today, I moved forward. I'm on the wrong one. Hang on. Based on the evidence and explanations received today, I moved forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the proposed amendments to all sections with the exception of 190608, with the findings and conditions in the staff report dated August 30th, 2018.
That's turf, right?
Yep.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion?
Is everyone else okay with the flat roof then? Am I the only one who's not? Because I don't want to vote no on the whole thing. I like everything else on there except for the turf. And I'm okay with the turf if we had more detail.
That is a good question. Staff, could you address that? Is there really what's the reasoning that we hate flat roofs, or that
It's a council. It's
why?
We'd all take
Was
our
there
personal
discussion?
opinion. Personally, I think a lot of them look great, okay?
So we're putting into the code someone's personal opinion without further discussion.
There's a lot of code.
Reality, a lot of the code's like that.
Yeah, but it's at least logical.
Yeah, a lot of code you could say is arbitrary too.
I understand, but we improve it as we go, and we try to make it logical.
Right.
This one is blatantly
We're
illogical.
following up on direction staff was given.
You're the
One
only,
thing I have seen people do that are comfortable with it for the most part, but have a concern, is you could vote in favor of it, but just note on the record that you're concerned with that
Sounds
one particular aspect, and you'd like that information passed on to the council.
Understood.
I mean, the only logical reason I can see why you wouldn't want a flat roof in Utah is because of the snowpack.
No, but again, we allow it for commercial, we
doesn't
allow it
snow
for
here
single,
anymore.
Yeah.
so why not allow for all? That's all. It's up to the developer, just like it is for everything else.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
I'm perplexed of why we would disallow.
We
a
agree with the flat roof,
flat roof.
with the snow, but again, we allow it for single and we
Yeah.
allow it for commercial, so.
And I can see even in a commercial roof, if you've ever been on a commercial rooftop, they're not flat.
Probably not.
They all have places where water
So does the
goes.
one that I showed too. They
Yeah,
all
well,
have some kind of a slant.
Pitch,
A
yeah.
lot of them are held by parapets too, and they have decent slopes on it. You just can't see the slope.
Yeah, you
It's
can walk
there.
up and down those things,
Exactly,
and it looks
so-
flat from the ground, but anyway. Okay. We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
But I would like to make a comment that I'm not in favor of the flat roof terminology or code as it is today, because I don't really see the logical reason for creating that code. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so everybody had a chance to look at the minutes from August 23rd and August 29th? If so, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes from August 23rd and August 29th of this year.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. A question on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? What?
Was everybody at the August 29th meeting? They just voted on it? Okay. That was the joint council meeting?
That was the fire station training room.
Do we need to split those?
Probably.
There's two different ones.
There's two different meetings there. The motion was for both.
Would you like to take your vote off for the
so-
minutes from August 29th?
I was here for August 23rd, so I vote aye, but for August 29th, I abstain.
You got that? Do you have that, Nora?
Yeah,
We have an,
Okay, well,
you got that? Okay. Is that good, Kevin? We're
You
okay
vote
with
twice
that?
on the same motion?
We had one motion for two sets of minutes.
Motion carried. I mean, he
Yeah.
noted it. He's fine.
Yeah.
Reports of action.
no reports of action tonight.
No reports.
No.
Oh, okay. Commission comments.
I just had one. Dave wanted me to remind everybody, I guess there's an occasion once in a while where they need to get a hold of us before a meeting, and we probably need to give the city numbers where we can be reached. The number that the city has on file for me is like a home number, and I'm not there.
I think I have all of your cell
What's
numbers.
that? No, I don't have a landline.
We're going into your house?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I have a cell phone that's a home
I
line.
believe I have everyone's cell phone.
You do?
I believe
Okay.
so. I can check later and get back with you on
Because
that.
Tina tried to call me one day, and she called the other line and not mine.
I'll check.
Okay.
Tomorrow I'll send you off a group text, just say respond, to see if it even registers on your phone.
Yeah, that
Let me
works.
know.
Okay.
I will not be here on the 27th.
Oh, man. Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the commission?
Yeah, I have a comment. I wanted to, another one, oh, okay. On the Saratoga North Gate application, I noticed that, let's see, this is okay, so here's my question. If code 19.17.02 says all zone change requests, all zone changes requires a community plan to accompany the request, and reviewing, but the reviewing of the company or community plan could take over a month. Should we continue to require the PC, the planning commission, to review rezone petitions within 30 days?
Are you talking concept plan? Community plans aren't required where they're proposing.
What did they give us today? It was a community plan? Oh, no, it was a concept plan.
Concept plan.
I'm sorry, I put CP here as an abbreviation when I was writing this.
Yeah,
So I meant to say.
we're supposed to get to them within a certain time frame. Now, just to explain kind of what happened with this one, it was never explained to me otherwise, so when I get a concept plan review, I look at it and I go, okay, we need red lines corrected until we have a concept that's gonna work. Okay, that's not how we're to proceed with those, come to find out. We're basically to redline a concept once, send it to them, says, you have the option of continuing to go through the process of resubmittals, correct red lines, or we'll send that red line along with your request to do the rezone, gentlemen, whatever it may be, knowing that, A, it's a concept, things still need to be worked out, and that things could change. So we will leave that up to them to decide what route to go.
Okay,
And so in this one, that's what was going on back and forth. And I did one red line, send it back. They corrected that, gave it back to me. I did another red line, and that's where things kind of got.
Okay, so then normally, a concept plan review should be able to be done within the 30 days.
Right, and also depends on one, obviously, our workload. Obviously, that's what we want to do. We could get red lines, and they may not respond for a month to get them back to us. So that time frame could be extended beyond 30 days.
Okay.
There are some factors that are going to play into that.
So we don't need to change the code?
No.
Because it's not an unrealistic...
No, it's not.
A deadline?
No.
Okay. And then the other comment was, for that luau training that we had, luau, I called it luau.
That's what it's called.
Yeah. I thought there was some cool stuff there. So it looks like our city staff seems to be doing the right things, and providing good and responsible guidance from a planning perspective, based on the training's topics, based on what they covered and told us about what other cities were doing, and this kind of stuff that they're talking about, they're implementing. Wow, big deal. This is why we're showing this to you, because it's a great example. You guys have been doing it for years, and so I thought our staff was doing a really good job compared to what other cities were showing, to what they held as examples of what we should be doing. So that was cool. I was wondering, the code requires 19.03.09, I think it is, that we have we have to have an appeals authority, and our code 19.03.09 says that we have an examiner, we have a hearing examiner.
Correct.
And I was wondering, who is that?
That's an attorney up in Salt Lake. Do you remember his name, Kevin, by chance?
It's Phil Morris.
Okay, so there's a specific
Up in
person.
Ogden.
Ogden. And we act,
Attorney, and he's a city manager up there.
Okay.
Yeah, it just makes, it's better for simplicity purposes.
instead of a board of adjustment, a city can have a hearings examiner, and that's what we have here.
I was just wondering if there was.
He's only been used once in the last year. We actually have an item coming up for him to hear in a week or two to act on an appeal, or not appeal, but a hearing for a setback.
So we don't look for a hearing examiner anytime a case comes up. We just have one that's designated.
Basically on retainer.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And then for moderate income housing, we had a placeholder in the general plan that talks about some stats and defines what a medium income housing is, and how what kind of medium income housing could be in Saratoga Springs, and how many such such units we have. I think it was based on 2016. We also have an objective in the general plan, but no plan in how to achieve the objective, and no mention of, and no mention in the general plan of Prop 6. Maybe we don't need to, because I don't know if we need to, but though we include the pictures of various multifamily housing types in our general plan. So I was just wondering if maybe in the future, that's something that we could look into, the staff could look into about this, so that the public has a way to understand what the city has to do versus what it needs to do.
Yeah, the city is required to have a low to moderate income housing plan as part of the general plan, and we have that right now. It has to be updated every 2 years, and that's what.
I know that plan, though, is like one paragraph, and
it's longer than that, though. But the issue is, do we have the capability in the city to have low to moderate income housing? Yes. That's going to run into Prop 6 issues, though.
But I'm also required by this. The reason why I bring this up is Luau said that, some cities have to comply, depending on the size and everything, has to comply with state law.
Right, but the issue you're into is we have the mechanism to do it.
Right.
The developers have to come in, and then the city council then has to approve it ultimately. I mean, the mechanism's there to have low to moderate income housing. We can't force people to build it. We just have to be able to have that door for them to open and do it. But then again, the Prop 6 issue is going to come up as well with that. Honestly, in the city right now, we don't have a lot of low to moderate income housing. Even across the street at Eldara, not much of that would qualify as low to moderate income housing.
Right. Well, I guess I'm saying is based on the training that we had is I looked at our code or at our general plan, and it just has a little paragraph and doesn't mention Prop 6 at all, even though that's a big concern. So maybe in the future, that's something that we modify, during the 2-year period.
Yeah, and we'll be looking at this winter here to get that amended.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, that's it for me. Thanks.
Director's report.
Look back, not a lot of new applications have come in. We've had quite a bit of resubmittals. We did get the Jordan Promenade Village Plan 1. That is in now, so the NOR's in that review process for that one, so that'll be a significant development there. Update on Beacon Point, I don't have one. We've given them red lines. We discussed with them about the Founders Boulevard, the main road, going into the project, and some design issues and what they wanted the city to maintain, what we kind of thought would be better, and they came back with a separate proposal. I guess that's still working its way up the chain in the LDS Church to see what they're going to resubmit and what red lines they still have yet to correct. We're anticipating any day. We hope that will come back, and we'll get going on the process again to go through that and hopefully have something to you shortly.
Without objection, we adjourn.
You didn't give me a chance to object.